I discovered my application to the prestigious Westridge Music Academy was secretly withdrawn by my father, who instead used my college fund to support my younger brother Jason's baseball career. Years later, when I worked my way through community college, my father showed up asking for financial help with Jason's professional training. That's when I revealed I'd become a talent scout for the very program that once rejected me, and my signature could have guaranteed my brother's future. Now my father must face the consequences of his favoritism while I decide whether forgiveness is possible after all he's done. Growing up in Portland, Oregon, I always knew I was different from the rest of my family. While my father Frank and younger brother Jason bonded over baseball statistics and weekend games, I found solace in the black and white keys of our old upright piano. My mother Linda tried to support my musical interests, but in our household, sports always took center stage. From the moment Jason could hold a bat, my father decided he was destined for athletic greatness. Every conversation at dinner revolved around Jason's latest game or upcoming tournament. My piano recitals were treated as inconveniences to be scheduled around baseball practice. Even when I won my first state competition at 14, my father's only comment was, "That's nice, but did you see Jason's batting average this season?" Despite the constant favoritism, I poured myself into music. Our family piano was positioned in the corner of our living room, an afterthought compared to the shrine of baseball trophies dominating our mantel. Most of those trophies were participation awards, but my father displayed them as if they were Olympic gold medals. Mrs. Harlow, my high school music teacher, was the first person who made me believe I could build a real future with my talent. During my junior year, after hearing me play Chopin's Ballade No. 1, she pulled me aside with tears in her eyes. "Dylan, I've taught for 30 years, and I've never heard a student play with such emotion. You have something special, something rare. You need to apply to Westridge." Westridge Music Academy in New York was the dream destination for aspiring musicians. Their acceptance rate was under 5%, and their alumni performed with the most prestigious orchestras and venues worldwide. The thought of applying terrified me almost as much as it excited me. With Mrs. Harlow's encouragement, I prepared my application during my senior year of high school. I practiced until my fingers ached, recording and re-recording my audition pieces until they were perfect. When I finally submitted my application, I tried not to hope too much. 3 weeks later, I received a preliminary acceptance letter. Mrs. Harlow screamed when I told her, hugging me so tight I could barely breathe. "They almost never send these," she explained. "It means they're very interested. You just need to submit your final portfolio and do an interview." That night at dinner, I nervously shared the news. My mother seemed genuinely happy, clutching the letter as if it were made of gold. "We're so proud of you, Dylan," she said, tears welling in her eyes. My father's reaction was more subdued. "New York is expensive," he said, pushing his peas around his plate. "And what kind of career will you have? Professional pianist? How many people actually make a living doing that?" "Frank," my mother warned, but he continued, "I'm just being practical. Jason has real prospects with baseball. Scouts are already watching him, and he's only a sophomore." I tried not to let his words dampen my excitement. "The letter says I might qualify for a scholarship after the interview, and I've been saving from my job at the music store. We'll figure it out," my mother assured me, shooting my father a look that ended the conversation. Over the next few weeks, I threw myself into preparing my final portfolio. The deadline was approaching, and I needed everything to be perfect. That's when I noticed a pattern forming. Each time I scheduled a practice session, my father would suddenly remember a family obligation that required my presence. First, it was helping Jason prepare for a game. Then it was visiting my grandmother, who seemed surprised to see us on a Tuesday afternoon. Next came an impromptu fishing trip that couldn't possibly be rescheduled. 2 weeks before my portfolio was due, I confronted him. "Dad, I need to practice. The Westridge deadline is coming up." He barely looked up from the baseball game on TV. "Family comes first, Dylan. There's more to life than sitting alone at a piano." That night, I stayed up until 3 in the morning practicing, determined not to let anything stand in my way. But the sense that my father was deliberately undermining me grew stronger with each passing day. Little did I know how far he would go to protect his golden child at the expense of my dreams. As the final portfolio deadline approached, I felt simultaneously exhausted and exhilarated. After months of preparation and years of practice, I was finally ready. Mrs. Harlow had helped me polish my pieces to perfection, and the day before the submission deadline, she recorded me playing in the school auditorium. "That was magical, Dylan," she said, reviewing the footage. "Westridge would be crazy not to accept you." I drove home with the precious recording, imagining my future in New York. For the first time, I allowed myself to fully embrace the possibility that my life could be about music, not just as a hobby but as my calling. When I arrived home, I heard raised voices coming from the kitchen. I quietly closed the front door and paused in the hallway, my heart racing as I recognized my parents in the middle of a heated argument. "You had no right, Frank." My mother's voice was strained with anger. "No right at all. I did what was best for this family," my father shot back. "We can't afford to waste money on a pipe dream when Jason has a real future ahead of him. It wasn't your decision to make. The letter was addressed to Dylan, not you." I stepped into the kitchen, still clutching my recording. "What letter?" Both my parents froze. My mother's face drained of color, while my father's jaw clenched in that familiar way that signaled he was digging in his heels. "Dylan," my mother began, her voice suddenly gentle. "We were just discussing." "What letter?" I repeated, looking between them. After a painful silence, my father spoke. "Westridge sent a follow-up about your application. They needed additional information." "When?" My voice was barely audible. "Last month," my mother whispered, not meeting my eyes. "Where is it?" Another uncomfortable silence filled the room. Finally, my father crossed his arms. "I handled it." "You handled it?" The realization was dawning on me, too terrible to believe. "What does that mean?" "I withdrew your application," he stated flatly. "I told them you'd decided to pursue other opportunities." The recording slipped from my fingers, clattering to the floor. "You did what?" "Dylan." "Honey." My mother stepped toward me, but I backed away. "Why would you do that?" I asked, my voice breaking. "Why?" My father seemed irritated that he even had to explain. "Music isn't a real career, Dylan. It's a hobby. We need to be realistic about your future. Jason has scouts looking at him already. He could go pro with the right training. That's a real opportunity." "My opportunity was real, too," I shouted, anger replacing shock. "You had no right. I'm your father. I know what's best." "Frank," my mother interrupted, "tell him everything." My father shot her a warning look, but she continued. "Dylan deserves to know. Tell him about the money." "What money?" I demanded. My father sighed heavily. "Your college fund. We've reallocated it." "Reallocated it where?" Though I already knew the answer. "Jason's been invited to an elite training camp this summer. It's expensive, but it could make all the difference for his career. The scouts will all be there." The betrayal was complete. Not only had my father sabotaged my chance at Westridge, but he'd also taken the money I'd been counting on for college. My entire future had been sacrificed for my brother's baseball dreams. "Did you ever consider what I wanted?" I asked, my voice eerily calm despite the storm raging inside me. "You're young. You don't know what's best for your future," my father replied dismissively. "I'm 18. It's my life. As long as you live under this roof, then I won't live under this roof anymore." I cut him off, turning to walk out. "Dylan, please," my mother called after me. "We can talk about this." I paused at the doorway. "When was my Westridge interview scheduled for?" My parents exchanged glances. "Last Tuesday," my mother admitted quietly. "The day your father insisted we all go to Jason's game." The final piece clicked into place. The game that absolutely couldn't be missed. The game where a special scout was supposedly watching Jason. The game that my father had insisted the entire family attend to show support. I had missed my Westridge interview for that game. "You knew," I whispered. "You scheduled that on purpose." My father didn't deny it. Jason needed our support that day. Family comes first. "Family?" I laughed bitterly. "Is that what this is? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like there's Jason, and then there's everyone else." That night, I packed my things. My mother tried to convince me to stay, promising we'd figure something out, but the trust was shattered. My father didn't even come upstairs to speak to me. As I carried my bags downstairs the next morning, I found Jason sitting alone at the kitchen table, eating cereal before school. "Are you really leaving?" he asked, looking genuinely upset. "Yeah, buddy, I am. Because of me? Because of the baseball camp?" I set down my bags and sat across from him. "No, not because of you. This isn't your fault. But Dad said the money was supposed to be for your college." It was. But things change. I didn't want to burden him with adult problems. Despite everything, he was still my little brother. "Will you come to my games sometimes?" I couldn't make that promise. "We'll see. Take care of Mom, okay?" As I walked out the door with nowhere to go and no plan beyond survival, I realized my father had taken more than my opportunity and my money. He'd taken my place in my family, and I had no idea if I would ever get it back. The first few weeks on my own were brutal. I crashed on my friend Trevor's couch while looking for work and affordable housing. Pride prevented me from calling my mother, though she left tearful voicemails begging me to come home. My father never called. I found a job at a coffee shop near Portland Community College, where I enrolled in general education courses. It wasn't Westridge, but it was something. Between opening the shop at 5 in the morning and closing at 2 in the afternoon, I attended afternoon classes and studied late into the night. Sleep became a luxury I rarely enjoyed. 2 months into this grueling routine, I met Alicia in my English composition class. She noticed me nodding off during lectures and offered me her notes. Over cheap cafeteria meals, we became friends. Unlike most people who responded with pity when they heard my story, Alicia responded with righteous anger. "That's straight up abusive," she declared after I told her about my father's manipulation. "He had no right to make that decision for you." "I know that logically," I admitted. "But there's still this voice in my head that says, maybe he was right. Maybe music isn't a realistic path." "That's his voice in your head, not yours," she said firmly. "You need to reconnect with what you love." She was right. I had been so focused on survival that I'd abandoned music entirely. The pain of losing Westridge had made even thinking about playing unbearable. But Alicia's perspective helped me see that by giving up music, I was letting my father win twice. The next day, I visited the college's music department and asked about practice rooms. They allowed students to reserve time, even if they weren't music majors. I began practicing again during the gaps between work and classes. The familiar feel of keys beneath my fingers brought both comfort and sadness. After a particularly emotional practice session, I ran into Professor Winters, the head of the music department. He had overheard me playing Rachmaninoff and waited to introduce himself. "That was quite moving," he said. "Are you considering our music program?" I explained my situation, carefully omitting the details about my family. Professor Winters listened thoughtfully before making an unexpected offer. "We have several families looking for piano teachers for their children. With your talent, you could earn decent money, more than that coffee shop pays, and it would keep you connected to music." Within a month, I had 6 students ranging from beginners to intermediate players. Teaching wasn't performing, but it provided better income and reconnected me to music in a new way. I discovered I had a knack for explaining complex concepts and motivating young players. For the first time since leaving home, I felt a sense of purpose. Around this time, I reconnected with Mrs. Harlow, my high school teacher. She was overjoyed to hear from me and devastated to learn about what had happened with Westridge. "I always sensed your father wasn't supportive, but I never imagined he would go that far," she said during our lunch meeting. "What can I do to help now?" Mrs. Harlow began referring her overflow students to me, further expanding my teaching business. Between teaching, classes, and my now part-time coffee shop job, I was busy but finally building something for myself. My contact with my family remained minimal. My mother called regularly, and I answered when I could, though our conversations were strained. She reported that Jason was doing well in baseball, but carefully avoided mentioning my father. I never asked about him, and she didn't volunteer information. Nearly a year after leaving home, I stumbled across a Facebook post from my aunt congratulating Jason on his baseball scholarship. The comments section caught my attention. My father had responded, thanking everyone for their support during this family transition period, especially after Dylan chose to abandon his music studies to find himself. The blatant lie sent me into a rage. Not only had he sabotaged my dreams and stolen my college fund, but now he was rewriting history to make himself the supportive father and me the flaky son. I nearly called him to confront him, but stopped myself. What would be the point? He would never admit what he'd done. Instead, I channeled my anger into building my new life. I increased my course load, determined to finish my associate degree as quickly as possible. I expanded my teaching to include small group lessons, which were more profitable. I even started a small savings account, setting aside a little each month toward eventually transferring to a 4-year university. 3 years passed in this manner. My teaching business thrived, expanding to 20 students with a waiting list. I moved from my tiny studio apartment to a modest one-bedroom place where I could fit a digital piano for practice. I completed my associate degree and enrolled in Portland State University's music education program, paying my tuition out of pocket each semester. The pain of my father's betrayal dulled from an acute stab to a persistent ache. I rarely thought about Westridge anymore, though occasionally I would allow myself to wonder what might have been. Those moments of regret were dangerous, threatening to pull me back into bitterness, so I tried to focus on the present. Then one rainy Tuesday afternoon, everything changed. I was preparing for a lesson when my doorbell rang. When I opened the door, I found myself face to face with my father for the first time in 3 years. He looked older, the lines around his eyes deeper, his posture less confident. Neither of us spoke for a long moment. Finally, he cleared his throat. "Hello, Dylan. May I come in?" I stepped aside wordlessly, unprepared for the flood of emotions his presence triggered. Anger, hurt, curiosity, and a stubborn remnant of longing for his approval all battled within me. As he surveyed my small apartment, I wondered what he saw. Success? Failure? Evidence of my independence? Whatever he was looking for, his expression revealed nothing. "You look well," he offered. "What do you want, Dad?" I asked, unwilling to engage in small talk. He sat down on my couch without being invited. "I need to talk to you about Jason." Of course. Why else would he break 3 years of silence? Is he okay? Despite everything, concern for my brother surfaced immediately. He's fine. Great, actually. He's been offered a spot at the National Baseball Academy. It's the best training facility in the country. Major League Scouts recruit directly from their program. I waited for him to continue, sensing there was more to this unexpected visit. "The thing is," he went on, "it's expensive. Very expensive." And there it was. The real reason for his visit. "We've hit some financial rough patches. I was laid off last year. Been doing consulting work. But it's not steady. Your mother's hours at the hospital were cut back." "I'm sorry to hear that," I said, and I meant it. Despite everything, I didn't want my parents to struggle. "Jason needs this opportunity, Dylan. It's everything we've worked for." The use of "we" wasn't lost on me. My father still saw Jason's baseball career as a family mission, something we had all sacrificed for, including me, apparently, without my consent. "What does this have to do with me?" I asked, though I already knew. "We need help with the tuition," he stated bluntly. "Just until I land a new full-time position." The audacity was breathtaking. After stealing my college fund and sabotaging my future, he expected me to contribute to Jason's training. There was no apology, no acknowledgement of past wrongs, just an expectation that I would once again sacrifice for the golden child. "You're asking me for money?" I clarified, wanting to be absolutely certain I understood. "Not for me. For Jason. For your brother. The brother whose baseball camp you used my college fund for. The opportunity you decided was more important than mine." His expression hardened. "That again? I made the best decision for our family. One of you had real prospects. I had to be practical." "Practical," I repeated. "Is that what you call lying to me? Withdrawing my application behind my back? Making me miss my interview? You were 18, with an unrealistic dream. I was trying to protect you from disappointment." "No," I said, standing up. "You were trying to protect your dream for Jason. It was never about me." "So you won't help your own brother?" he challenged. "This isn't about Jason. This is about you coming here after 3 years. with no apology, no acknowledgement of what you did, expecting me to open my wallet. Did you ever consider that maybe I've been struggling too? That I've been working multiple jobs while putting myself through school because someone took my college fund? My father stood, his face flushed with anger. I see you're still as selfish as ever. This opportunity could set Jason up for life. And what about my opportunity? The one you destroyed? Playing piano for tips in a bar somewhere? That was your grand future? His dismissal of my passion still had the power to wound, even after all this time. But I was no longer the teenager who would accept his judgment as truth. Get out, I said quietly. Dylan, get out, I repeated, louder this time. You don't get to show up here and insult me after what you did. Tell Mom I'm fine. Tell Jason I wish him luck. But don't come back. After he left, I sat at my piano, unable to play, my hands trembling with rage and hurt. Just when I thought I'd moved past the pain, he'd reopened every wound with surgical precision. But this time, something was different. For the first time, I'd stood my ground. I hadn't buckled under his disapproval or second-guessed my choices. It was a small victory, but it was mine. What I couldn't know then was that this uncomfortable reunion was just the beginning. My life was about to change in ways I never could have anticipated, and the past I thought I'd left behind was about to collide with my carefully constructed present. 2 weeks after my father's unwelcome visit, I was teaching 8-year-old Sophia Barrett how to navigate a particularly tricky passage in her recital piece when her mother interrupted our lesson. I'm so sorry, Dylan, but there's someone at the door asking for you. He says he's your brother? My hands froze over the keys. Jason was here? I hadn't seen him in over 3 years. Not since that morning I'd left home. It's okay, Mrs. Barrett. Sophia, practice measures 16 through 24 until I get back. Jason stood awkwardly in the Barretts' living room, looking simultaneously familiar and like a stranger. He'd grown several inches and filled out considerably. The lanky teenager I'd left behind had been replaced by a young man who looked every bit the athlete my father had always wanted him to be. Hey, Dylan, he said, his voice deeper than I remembered. Jason, this is a surprise. Mrs. Barrett tactfully excused herself to check on dinner, giving us privacy. I got your address from Mom, Jason explained. I hope it's okay that I came by. Of course. I'm just in the middle of a lesson. Can we talk after? He nodded. I'll wait. I returned to Sophia, but my concentration was shot. After fumbling through the remainder of the lesson, I thanked Mrs. Barrett and led Jason outside. There's a diner around the corner, I suggested. We could grab coffee? Over mugs of mediocre coffee, we regarded each other cautiously. 3 years of separation creating a chasm between us. You look good, he offered. Mom said you're teaching a lot of students now. Yeah, about 25 regular ones. And I'm finishing my degree at Portland State. Music education, right? Mom mentioned that too. I nodded, wondering when my mother had shared these details and why Jason was suddenly interested in my life. So what brings you here? Did Dad send you to try again about the baseball academy money? Jason winced. He told you about that? No, he didn't send me. Actually, he doesn't know I'm here. That was unexpected. Then why are you here? Jason stared into his coffee. Because I need to tell you something, and I need you to just listen before you say anything. Can you do that? I agreed, my curiosity piqued. I don't want to go to the National Baseball Academy, he stated flatly. I've never wanted a baseball career. It's always been Dad's dream, not mine. This revelation hit me like a physical blow. All these years, all the sacrifices forced upon me, had been in service of a future my brother didn't even want? But you're good at baseball, I said stupidly, unable to process this information. I'm good because I've practiced 4 hours every day since I was 7, he replied with a bitter laugh. Anyone would be decent with that much practice. But I've never loved it. Not the way you love music. Does Dad know? I've tried telling him 1,000 different ways. He doesn't hear me. He just talks about scouts and scholarships and how I'm going to make it to the majors. It's like he's living through me. Suddenly, my father's obsession with Jason's baseball career took on a new dimension. It wasn't just favoritism. It was his own unfulfilled dream being forced onto his son. A dream so important to him that he was willing to sacrifice his other son's future to make it happen. "So what do you want to do instead?" I asked. "Engineering," Jason replied without hesitation. "I'm good at math and physics. My teachers think I could get into a good program. And the academy? Dad's been pushing me to accept, but I've been stalling. The thing is, if I don't go to the academy, I lose the scholarship to Western State that's contingent on their training. Dad can't afford tuition otherwise, not since he lost his job." The pieces were falling into place. My father needed my financial help because Jason's future depended on a path he didn't even want. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked, though I was beginning to understand. "Because I need your help, but not in the way Dad asked. I need your advice on how to stand up to him, how to make my own choice, the way you did." I almost laughed at the irony. All these years, I'd assumed Jason was the golden child, enjoying every advantage while I struggled. Now I realized he'd been trapped in his own way, a puppet dancing to our father's tune. It wasn't easy, I admitted, and I lost a lot in the process. "We haven't spoken in 3 years. I know. And I'm sorry about that. I'm sorry about a lot of things, including what happened with your Westridge application. Dad told me about it last year, during a fight. He didn't mean to admit it, but it came out. So my father had kept that secret from Jason too. Another manipulation, another deception. It wasn't your fault," I assured him. "You were just a kid. Still, it wasn't right. Your college fund, your application, none of it was right." We sat in silence for a moment, both processing the complicated web of our family dynamics. "I miss you," Jason finally said. "We all do. Even Dad, though he'd never admit it." "I miss you too," I confessed. "But I don't know if I can be around Dad again." "I understand. But maybe we could start rebuilding. Just you and me, and Mom would love to see you." The prospect of reconnecting with Jason and my mother was appealing, but the thought of facing my father again filled me with dread. Before I could respond, Jason dropped another bombshell. "There's one more thing you should know. I've been taking piano lessons." "What? Since when?" "About a year ago. There's a teacher near our house. I'm not very good yet, but I really enjoy it. I always loved hearing you play when we were growing up." The image of Jason secretly taking piano lessons, perhaps afraid of our father's reaction, broke my heart a little. Had he been living in fear of disappointing our father just as I had? "Does Dad know?" "No," Jason admitted. "I told him I'm doing extra batting practice. The lessons are during his shift at the warehouse, so he's never caught me." Another secret, another lie. Our family was built on them. "Jason, you need to live your own life. Not Dad's, not mine. Yours. I know that now, but I need help figuring out how. Will you help me?" Looking at my brother, I saw not the favored golden child who had everything handed to him, but a young man trapped by expectations just as suffocating as the ones that had driven me away. In that moment, I made a decision that would alter both our paths. "Yes," I promised. "I'll help you. But first, there's something I need to tell you about. Something that might change everything for both of us." The week after Jason's visit was one of the busiest of my teaching career. Spring recital season was approaching, and my students were in various states of preparation and panic. I was finishing the final lesson of the day with 12-year-old Marcus Chen, one of my most gifted students. "That was much better," I encouraged as he completed his piece. "Your dynamics are really bringing the emotion through now." Marcus beamed at the praise. "My mom says you're the best teacher she's ever found for me. She wants to know if you'll be at my school recital next Tuesday." I wouldn't miss it, I promised. After Marcus left, I packed up my teaching materials, my mind still processing the revelations from Jason's visit. I had arranged to meet him again the following weekend to discuss his options for engineering programs, but I still hadn't told him about the development in my own life that might offer him an unexpected path forward. The school recital was held in the gymnasium of Portland West Elementary School, transformed for the evening with folding chairs and a rented baby grand piano. I sat in the back row, program in hand, waiting for Marcus's performance. "Is this seat taken?" a voice asked. I looked up to see a tall, distinguished-looking man with silver-streaked hair and kind eyes. "No, please." I gestured to the empty chair. Thomas Graham. He offered his hand. The name sounded vaguely familiar, but I couldn't place it. Dylan Hayes. You're Marcus Chen's teacher, aren't you? His mother pointed you out earlier. Yes, I am. Do you have a student performing tonight? He smiled. Not exactly. I'm here scouting talent, actually. Before I could ask what he meant, the recital began. Marcus was scheduled near the end of the program, and when his turn came, I felt the familiar mixture of pride and nervousness that accompanied watching my students perform. From the first notes, I knew this would be his best performance yet. The hours we'd spent working on emotional expression had paid off. Marcus played with a maturity beyond his years, drawing gasps from the audience during particularly moving passages. When he finished, the applause was enthusiastic. Thomas Graham leaned toward me. Impressive. You've taught him well. He has a natural gift, but I can hear your influence in his interpretation. Thank you, I replied, curious about this stranger who spoke so knowledgeably about music. You mentioned your scouting talent? Indeed. I work for Westridge Music Academy. Perhaps you've heard of it? My heart nearly stopped. Westridge. The dream that had been ripped away from me. The opportunity my father had destroyed. I am familiar with it, I managed to say, my voice carefully neutral. I travel the country looking for promising young musicians. Marcus has potential, though he's still quite young, but I'm equally interested in identifying talented teachers who can help develop the next generation. The recital concluded, and as parents and students began to disperse, Thomas suggested we continue our conversation over coffee. In a nearby cafe, he explained his role as Westridge's West Coast talent scout. The academy has expanded its mission in recent years, he told me. We've always focused on developing performers, but we've recognized the vital importance of educators in the pipeline. The best teachers often identify talent years before we see it. That makes sense, I agreed, still struggling to process the cosmic coincidence that had brought a Westridge representative into my orbit after all these years. Mrs. Chen speaks very highly of your teaching methods. She says her son has made remarkable progress under your guidance. That's why I wanted to speak with you tonight. I appreciate that, but I'm just a private teacher working toward my degree. Nothing special. Thomas tilted his head, studying me. Your name seems familiar. Have you applied to Westridge before? The question hit like a punch to the gut. Yes, I admitted. Years ago, right after high school, I received a preliminary acceptance but never completed the process. Something flickered in Thomas's eyes. Wait, Dylan Hayes? From Portland? About 4 years ago? I nodded, surprised that he would remember a single applicant among thousands. I remember your application. Your recordings were exceptional. We were quite disappointed when you withdrew. I didn't withdraw, I said quietly. My application was withdrawn, without my knowledge. Thomas frowned. That's highly unusual. What happened? If you don't mind my asking. Perhaps it was the years of keeping this painful secret. Or perhaps it was the surreal circumstance of sitting across from someone connected to my lost dream. But I found myself telling Thomas the whole story. My father's sabotage, the stolen college fund, my struggle to rebuild my life. When I finished, Thomas looked genuinely disturbed. I'm truly sorry that happened to you, Dylan. It explains a mystery that bothered me at the time. What mystery? I fought to hold your spot open past the deadline. Your preliminary recordings showed rare talent, and I convinced the committee to wait for your final portfolio. When we received the withdrawal notice, supposedly from you, something felt off. It wasn't consistent with the passion we'd heard in your playing. The revelation that someone at Westridge had believed in me enough to fight for my spot made the loss even more painful. All these years, I'd thought Westridge was just a closed door, an opportunity that had passed. Learning that someone had tried to keep that door open for me brought a fresh wave of grief for what might have been. Well, I said, trying to sound philosophical, life took me in a different direction. I've found fulfillment in teaching, and you're clearly exceptional at it. Which brings me to my proposal. Proposal? Westridge has a new outreach program. We're building a network of affiliated teachers across the country who help identify promising students who might otherwise be overlooked. These teachers receive training, resources, and the opportunity to recommend students directly to the academy, bypassing some of the initial application steps. You're offering me a position in this network? Based on what I've seen tonight and Mrs. Chen's recommendation, yes. The role includes a modest stipend, professional development opportunities, and the chance to nominate students for scholarships. Would that interest you? Would it interest me? To be connected to Westridge after all? To help talented young musicians get the opportunity that was stolen from me? It seemed too perfect to be real. I'd need to know more details, I said cautiously. But yes, I'm definitely interested. Thomas smiled. Excellent. I'll send you the formal information. We'll start with a trial period. But I have a feeling you'll be an outstanding addition to our network. As we exchanged contact information, I couldn't help thinking about Jason, my brother, secretly taking piano lessons while pretending to practice baseball. My brother, trapped in our father's dream just as I had been. Thomas, I asked, does Westridge offer any programs for older beginners? Students who come to music later but show promise? Actually, we've recently launched a music appreciation track for exactly that demographic. It's less competitive than our performance program, but provides excellent fundamentals. Why do you ask? I know someone who might benefit from it, I replied, thinking that perhaps there was a way to help Jason find his own path, one that included music, but wasn't limited to it. As I walked home that night, I felt a strange sense of cosmic balance being restored. The opportunity I'd lost had transformed and returned in a new form, one that might allow me to help others avoid the fate I'd suffered. And perhaps, just perhaps, it might even provide a way to heal the broken pieces of my family. What I couldn't know then was that this chance encounter with Thomas Graham would set in motion a series of events that would bring me face to face with my father again, forcing us all to confront the truths we'd been avoiding for years. The reckoning I'd both feared and longed for was finally on the horizon. 3 weeks after meeting Thomas Graham, I found myself in an unexpected position of influence. The Westridge affiliation had already brought new students to my teaching practice, and I'd begun the process of evaluating which of my current students might benefit from the Academy's programs. One Saturday morning, I arrived early at the community center where I taught weekend group lessons. As I organized sheet music, I heard the door open behind me. "You're early today," I said, assuming it was one of my regular students. I wanted to talk before the others arrived. I turned to find Jason standing there, a piano book clutched nervously in his hands. Not just any piano book, the same beginner's method I used with my youngest students. "Jason, what are you doing here?" He shifted uncomfortably. "Remember when I told you I was taking piano lessons? Well, my teacher moved away last month. I've been practicing on my own, but I'm not making much progress. And you want me to teach you?" I was stunned. "If you're willing. I know it's weird, your little brother as a student, but I really want to learn." The revelation that Jason had sought me out specifically as a teacher touched me deeply. Despite everything our family had been through, despite our father's manipulation, Jason and I were finding our way back to each other through music. "Of course I'll teach you," I agreed. "But where does Dad think you are right now?" "Baseball clinic. Saturday mornings are the only time he works overtime consistently, so it's safe." I invited Jason to sit at the piano and played a few exercises to assess his level. His technique was rudimentary, but his ear was surprisingly good, and he showed a natural sensitivity to dynamics that many beginners lack. "You've got potential," I told him honestly. "With regular practice, you could progress quickly." Jason beamed at the praise. "Really?" My other teacher wasn't very encouraging. "Really. But Jason, we need to talk about this secrecy. Living a double life is exhausting. Believe me, I know." His smile faded. "Dad would never understand. You know how he gets about baseball." "I do. But this situation isn't sustainable. Eventually, he'll find out. What choice do I have? The academy deadline is next month, and he's expecting me to go. If I refuse, I lose the scholarship to Western State." The mention of the deadline reminded me of my conversation with Thomas. "Actually, that's something I wanted to discuss with you. I might have an alternative option." I explained my new affiliation with Westridge and the music appreciation program that might suit Jason. It's not a full scholarship, but there's financial aid available. And they have partnerships with several universities for students interested in other fields, like engineering. Hope flickered in Jason's eyes, quickly replaced by doubt. Dad would never agree to it, especially if you're involved. No offense. None taken. But Jason, at some point, you have to make your own choices. Just like I did. It's different for you, he argued. You were always independent. I'm the one Dad invested everything in. The golden child, as you put it. And how's that working out for you? Jason's silence was answer enough. Look, I continued, I'm not saying it would be easy, but living a lie isn't easy either. And if you're serious about engineering and music, you need to start building that path now, not wasting another year pretending to want a baseball career. Our conversation was interrupted by the arrival of my other students. Jason joined the beginner group lesson, and I was impressed by his focus and determination. Afterward, we agreed to meet the following week to discuss his options further. What neither of us expected was that fate would force our hand much sooner. 3 days later, I received a panicked call from Jason. Dad found my piano books, he blurted before I could even say hello. He went ballistic. He's been calling all the music teachers in the area trying to figure out who's been teaching me. Calm down, I urged. Did you tell him about me? No, but he's threatening to go through my phone records to find out. Dylan, I can't do this anymore. I told him I don't want to go to the baseball academy. How did he take it? How do you think? He said I'm throwing away my future, that I'm being ungrateful after all he's sacrificed. He brought you up, said I was making the same mistake you did. My heart sank. Some things never changed. Where are you now? At Trevor's house. Dad and I got into a huge fight, and I left. Mom's been calling, but I needed some space. Stay there. I'm coming to get you. 30 minutes later, I picked up Jason from my old friend Trevor's house and drove him back to my apartment. He was visibly shaken, his eyes red from what I suspected were tears he'd tried to hide. What happened exactly? I asked once we were settled in my living room. Dad was looking for his baseball scorebook. He went through my room and found my piano books hidden under the mattress. There was sheet music, practice logs, everything. He confronted me when I got home from school, demanding to know how long this had been going on. And you told him the truth? I was tired of lying. I told him I'd been taking lessons for over a year, that I enjoyed music, and that I was considering engineering programs instead of baseball. That was brave, I said, meaning it. He didn't see it that way. He said I was betraying him, wasting my talent. Then he said something about how you must be behind this, poisoning me against baseball. I sighed. Of course my father would find a way to blame me. Then what happened? He started calling local music schools, demanding to know if I was registered there. When no one confirmed it, he said he'd go through my phone records to find my teacher. That's when I told him I didn't want to go to the baseball academy at all. And that's when the real fight started? Jason nodded. He said after everything he's done for me, all the sacrifices our family made for my career, I was being selfish. He brought up the money, how he used your college fund for my training. The mention of my stolen college fund reignited the old anger, but I pushed it aside. This wasn't about me right now. Jason, you can stay here as long as you need to, but eventually, we need to talk to Mom and Dad. This can't go on. I know, he agreed. Mom texted while I was waiting for you. She wants to meet tomorrow to talk. Just her. That's a start, I said. Let's see what she has to say. The next day, my mother met us at a park near my apartment. She looked older than I remembered. New lines of worry etched around her eyes. When she saw me, she stopped short, as if seeing a ghost. Dylan, she whispered, then rushed forward to embrace me. Oh, my boy. Despite everything, I found myself hugging her back fiercely. 3 years of minimal contact hadn't diminished the bond between us. After an emotional reunion, we sat on a bench while Jason explained everything. His secret piano lessons, his interest in engineering, his dread of the baseball academy. I had no idea you felt this way, my mother said, looking stricken. Why didn't you tell me? I tried, Mom. But whenever I mentioned anything other than baseball, Dad would shut it down, and you would just go along with him. My mother flinched at the accusation, but didn't deny it. Your father can be overwhelming when he's set on something. That's one word for it, I muttered. She turned to me, her eyes filled with regret. I failed both of you. I should have stopped your father when he interfered with your Westridge application. I should have noticed Jason was unhappy. I'm so sorry. Her apology was long overdue but sincere. What happens now? I asked. Dad still thinks Jason's going to the academy. He needs to know the truth, my mother said firmly. All of it. And we need to do it together, as a family. Are you sure that's wise? I was skeptical. The last time I saw Dad, he asked me for money, then insulted my career choices. Frank has changed, she insisted. Losing his job was a blow to his pride, and Jason leaving yesterday scared him. For the first time, he's questioning his approach. I wasn't convinced, but I agreed to a family meeting at my parents' house the following evening. If nothing else, it would give Jason a chance to stand up for his dreams with me as support. The next day, I drove Jason to our childhood home, my stomach in knots. As we walked up the familiar driveway, memories flooded back, some good, many painful. My mother greeted us at the door with a tentative smile. Your father's in the living room, she said quietly. He's agreed to listen. We found my father sitting stiffly in his recliner, looking uncomfortable and defensive. When he saw me, a complex mixture of emotions crossed his face: surprise, anger, perhaps a hint of shame. Dylan, he acknowledged with a nod. Jason said you've been harboring him. Not harboring, I corrected. Supporting him while he figures out what he really wants. And what would you know about what he wants? My father challenged. Frank, my mother warned. You promised to listen. My father subsided, gesturing for us to continue. Jason took a deep breath and stepped forward. Dad, I need you to hear me. I don't want to play baseball professionally. I never have. It's always been your dream, not mine. We've invested years in your training, my father countered. All those camps, coaches, equipment. I know. And I tried, Dad. I really tried to want it for you. But I can't spend my life doing something that makes me miserable. So what's your grand plan? Throw away your scholarship for piano lessons? The derision in his voice was unmistakable. Actually, I interjected, Jason has options. Real ones. I explained the Westridge Music Appreciation Program and its university partnerships. As I spoke, I could see my father's skepticism warring with surprise that I had a connection to the prestigious institution. You work with Westridge now? He asked when I finished. I'm an affiliated teacher. I identify promising students and help them prepare for auditions, like the position you might have had if Dad hadn't sabotaged your application, Jason added boldly. My father's face reddened. That was a different situation. Dylan's music was a hobby, not a career path. It was my passion, I corrected him. Just like baseball is yours, not Jason's. You turned out fine without Westridge, my father argued. No thanks to you, I shot back. I struggled for years, working multiple jobs, sleeping on couches, barely affording community college. All because you decided my dreams weren't worth supporting. The room fell silent. My father looked away, unable to meet my gaze. Frank, my mother said softly, it's time to stop pretending. What you did to Dylan was wrong, and now you're doing the same thing to Jason, forcing him into a future he doesn't want. I was trying to protect them, my father insisted. The music world, the sports world, they're brutal. Most people fail. That wasn't your choice to make, I said. We had the right to try and fail on our own terms. And what about all the sacrifices I've made? My father demanded. The second mortgage for Jason's training? The overtime shifts? The weekends spent at tournaments instead of rest? Sacrifices we never asked for, Jason said. Sacrifices for your dream, Dad, not ours. My father looked genuinely confused, as if this possibility had never occurred to him. You loved baseball as a kid. You were always so excited for practice. I was excited because you were excited, Jason explained gently. I wanted your approval, your attention, just like Dylan wanted with his music. Something seemed to break in my father then. The rigid defense, the self-righteousness, it all crumbled, leaving behind a man who suddenly looked smaller, almost lost. I just wanted to give you both opportunities I never had, he said quietly. I thought I knew what was best. We know, my mother assured him, taking his hand. But our boys are adults now. They need to make their own choices, and we need to support them, even if those choices aren't what we would have picked. My father looked at me, really looked at me, for what felt like the first time in years. Is it too late? He asked. Have I ruined everything? The question hung in the air between us, heavy with the weight of years of pain and misunderstanding. It was a moment of vulnerability I'd never expected from my father, a crack in the armor of certainty he'd always worn. "That depends," I answered carefully, "on whether you're willing to truly listen now, to both of us." As the four of us sat together in that living room, tentatively beginning a conversation that should have happened years ago, I realized we had reached a turning point. The damage couldn't be undone, but perhaps, just perhaps, we could build something new from the broken pieces of our past. The family meeting marked the beginning of a slow, sometimes painful process of healing. My father, to his credit, made a genuine effort to understand both Jason's desires and the harm his actions had caused me. It wasn't easy for any of us. Old patterns die hard, and there were moments when we fell back into familiar roles, my father dictating, me withdrawing, Jason trying to please everyone. But there were also breakthroughs. A week after our confrontation, my father called me, his voice uncharacteristically hesitant. "Dylan, I've been thinking about what you said, about Westridge and the music appreciation program for Jason. I'd like to learn more about it, if you're willing to explain." That call led to a meeting with Thomas Graham, who graciously agreed to discuss options with my entire family. As we sat in Thomas's office at the Portland Music Center, I watched my father listen attentively, asking thoughtful questions about curriculum and career paths. "The music appreciation track isn't designed to create professional performers," Thomas explained. "It's about developing a lifelong relationship with music while pursuing other primary career paths. Many of our students go on to careers in engineering, medicine, or business, with music remaining an important part of their lives." "And there's financial aid available?" my father asked. "Yes, especially for students who demonstrate both aptitude and need. Based on what Dylan has told me about Jason's progress, he would be a strong candidate." "What about the engineering aspect?" Jason inquired. "Would I still be able to pursue that as my main focus?" Thomas nodded. "Absolutely. We have partnership programs with several universities, including Portland State and Western Oregon. Your academic courses would be your primary focus, with music as an enrichment program." As the meeting progressed, I noticed a subtle shift in my father's demeanor. The defensive posture and skepticism gradually gave way to genuine interest. By the end, he was discussing practical details with Thomas, as if the decision had already been made. Outside after the meeting, my father surprised me by pulling me aside while Mom and Jason walked ahead to the car. "I was wrong about Westridge," he admitted quietly. "About a lot of things. Seeing that place, hearing about their programs. I understand now why it meant so much to you." "Thank you for saying that," I replied, unprepared for the lump forming in my throat. "I can't change what I did," he continued. "But I want you to know I'm proud of what you've accomplished on your own. Your teaching, your connection to Westridge, now you made that happen despite me, not because of me." It wasn't a direct apology, but from my father, this acknowledgement was significant. For the first time, he was seeing me, really seeing me as my own person, not just an extension of his expectations. In the weeks that followed, we established new family dynamics. Jason officially declined the baseball academy and applied to the Westridge Music Appreciation Program with my recommendation. My father, true to his word, supported this decision, even helping Jason prepare for his interview. My mother, emboldened by the family reconciliation, began to assert herself more. When my father occasionally slipped back into his controlling habits, she would gently but firmly redirect him. "Frank, remember our agreement. This is Jason's choice to make." As for me, my relationship with my father remained complicated. Years of hurt couldn't be erased overnight. But we were trying, each in our own way. He attended one of my student recitals, sitting awkwardly but attentively through 2 hours of performances ranging from beginners to advanced players. "You're good with them," he observed afterward. "The kids, they respect you." Coming from my father, it was high praise indeed. The most significant change, perhaps, came 6 months later when my father lost his consulting contract and faced serious financial difficulties. Rather than hiding the problem or making unilateral decisions, he called a family meeting. "I need to be honest with all of you," he began, looking uncomfortable. but determined. The job market for someone my age isn't great. I've applied for everything I can find, but nothing's coming through. We may need to downsize the house. What about Jason's tuition? My mother asked, concerned. The financial aid from Westridge covers most of it, my father assured her. I won't touch that. This is about our living expenses. I can increase my hospital hours, my mother offered. And I can contribute, I added, surprising myself. Not a lot, but something to help until you find a new position. My father's expression was a mixture of gratitude and discomfort. I appreciate that, but after everything that's happened, I can't accept your money, Dylan. It's not for you, I clarified. It's for Mom and for our family. Besides, it's my choice to offer it. That last part was important, establishing that financial help was my decision. Freely made, not a sacrifice forced upon me. My father seemed to understand the distinction, nodding slowly. Thank you, he said simply. 1 year after our family confrontation, we gathered to celebrate Jason's completion of his first semester in the Westridge program. He had thrived in the environment, developing his musical skills while excelling in his pre-engineering courses at Portland State. The dean said my application for the full engineering program next fall looks strong, Jason announced proudly over dinner. And my piano instructor thinks I might be ready for an advanced class next term. That's wonderful, honey. My mother beamed. My father nodded approvingly. You've worked hard. Both programs are lucky to have you. As we ate and talked, I marveled at how much had changed. My father had found a new job, less prestigious but more stable than his previous position. My mother had rediscovered her passion for nursing, taking on a leadership role in her department. Jason was pursuing his own dreams with enthusiasm, and I had been promoted to regional coordinator for Westridge's teacher affiliation program, overseeing the selection and training of new affiliated teachers throughout Oregon. After dinner, my father asked if I would play something on their piano, which had been largely untouched since I left home. The request surprised me. He had rarely shown interest in hearing me play before. I chose Debussy's Clair de Lune, a piece that had always moved me with its delicate beauty. As I played the familiar notes, I felt something shift within me. The bitterness that had been my companion for so long began to dissolve, replaced by a sense of peace. When I finished, the room was silent for a moment before my father spoke. I should have listened more, he said quietly. To all of you. To that. He gestured toward the piano. It wasn't a dramatic Hollywood moment of reconciliation. There were no tears or grand embraces. But in its way, it was profound, an acknowledgement of wrongs done, and a commitment to doing better. Later that evening, as I prepared to leave, Jason walked me to my car. Thank you, he said, for standing up to Dad, for showing me I could do it too. You did the hard part yourself, I reminded him. I just provided moral support. Still, if you hadn't left when you did, if you hadn't shown it was possible to make your own path, I might never have found the courage. I thought about that on the drive home, how our individual choices ripple outward, affecting others in ways we can't always predict. My decision to leave home had been about survival and self-preservation, but it had inadvertently given Jason permission to question our father's authority. 2 weeks later, Thomas Graham called with news that would bring our family journey full circle. Dylan, I want to propose something that might interest you. Westridge is establishing a scholarship fund for talented students from financially challenging backgrounds. We need someone to help design and oversee the program. Someone who understands both the artistic and practical challenges these students face. That sounds like important work, I agreed. Who are you considering? You, actually. Your background, combined with your success as a teacher and coordinator, makes you uniquely qualified. And there's one more thing we'd like to name it. The Hayes Opportunity Scholarship. I was momentarily speechless. Thomas, I don't know what to say. Say yes, he urged. This program could help dozens of students who might otherwise miss their chance, just as you nearly did. The symmetry was almost too perfect, using my position at the institution that once represented my lost dream to create opportunities for others in similar situations. By naming the scholarship after my family, it would transform our story from one of missed chances to one of new beginnings. I'd be honored, I told him. At the formal announcement of the Hayes Opportunity Scholarship, my entire family attended. As I described the program to the gathered donors and educators, I caught my father's eye in the audience. He gave me a small nod, his eyes suspiciously bright. After the presentation, he approached me, extending his hand formally. "Congratulations, Dylan. What you're doing here, it matters." I took his hand, then surprised both of us by pulling him into a brief hug. "Thank you for being here today." "I wouldn't have missed it," he replied. "I'm trying to get it right this time." That night, at a celebratory dinner, my father raised his glass in a toast. "To second chances," he said, "and to the Hayes family, moving forward together." As we clinked glasses, I reflected on the long, painful journey that had brought us to this point. The betrayal that had once seemed unforgivable had ultimately led to growth and healing for all of us. My father had been forced to confront his controlling nature. My mother had found her voice. Jason had discovered the courage to choose his own path, and I had transformed my personal loss into an opportunity to help others. The scholarship program grew over the next few years, helping dozens of talented young musicians pursue their dreams despite financial obstacles. I often thought about how different my life might have been if such a program had existed when I was 18. But then, without that painful detour, I might never have discovered my gift for teaching or my passion for creating opportunities for others. Life rarely follows the paths we imagine for ourselves. Sometimes the dreams we lose lead us to purposes we never could have envisioned. My father's betrayal had crushed my original dreams. But from those broken pieces, something more meaningful had emerged, not just for me, but for all the students whose lives I now had the privilege to impact. And in the end, isn't that the sweetest revenge of all? Not bitterness or retribution, but building something beautiful and lasting from the very experience that once threatened to destroy you. Have you ever had a family member try to control your future or make decisions without considering what you truly wanted? How did you handle that situation? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear it. Thank you for listening. And remember that sometimes our most painful experiences lead to our greatest growth. Until next time,